everyone, I'm Tanishka. You might know me as the Moon Woman. I'm looking a bit like a painted lady of the night. At the moment, I'm going out for what we call in Australia a slap-up feed with some of the wonderful sisters that shared the Red Tent Day with me here in Ubud. So I thought I'd better get dressed for dinner first, because I know once I start these video calls, I can go on and on and on and lose track of time. So, yeah, it's not about me trying to impress you as much as I love you. So I'm really just so excited after a whole day of channeling insights about this approaching full moon total lunar eclipse that we're headed into. And you might hear I sound a bit like a jazz singer. I'm a little bit hoarse after a huge shamanic breathwork journey yesterday. Yes, I did some voice work that was, yeah, interesting. So let's get into this. Hi, Jolene. So this is going to be the longest total lunar eclipse. So what happens is the sun, the moon, the earth all form in a line, in complete alignment. And so the earth's shadow is thrown up onto the moon. Well, thrown up is probably not the right word, but it turns the moon red. So it's known as a blood moon. And whilst blood moons are nothing new, we have them twice a year, you know, so there's a lot of people, you know, quoting Bible prophecy about the end of days. You know, we have blood moons every six months. We have them twice a year. However, this blood moon, they've been getting more and more in their magnitude and their intensity. So the longer that the moon is covered by the Earth's shadow has been getting longer, which makes it a more intense experience of us journeying our collective shadow. So this one is going to last for 1 hour and 20 minutes, which is the longest in the whole century. Hold on to your hats. So very exciting. It's happening at 4 degrees Aquarius. And Aquarius is, of course, the sign of this astrological age, the prophesized golden age that is, you know, the age of light when we go through this mass awakening of consciousness. So what it is in actual fact is a huge cosmic blood rite initiation for the collective psyche on the planet. It's going to be visible from Africa, India, Asia, Western Australia, and the eastern side of South America. For those that can sight it directly, it's probably going to have a more intensified effect, but it's going to affect us all, okay? So this is going to bring up for us our past collective shadow, as well as any unresolved traumatic experiences from our past that we are still carrying in our womb, in our hara if you're a man, but in your emotional center. So, you know, if you can do trauma release exercises, somatic experiencing, breath work, just jumping around to music in your lounge room, get in a bath and have a cry if you feel emotional. Don't judge yourself, don't create a story if emotion comes up, but this is a time to release emotionally the past so that we are free to move forwards, okay? So I am going to share an experience that I had of that and how profound it was for me yesterday in this breath work, in the hope that it might inspire those of you that can relate to this in some way. So you never know what experience you're going to get when you go into a breathwork session, and this one was facilitated beautifully by my dear sister Debbie Ma here in Ubud. If any of you ever come to Ubud, I thoroughly recommend doing one of her shamanic breathwork sessions at Radiantly Alive. Also, my brother Levi Banner at Yoga Barn does great breathwork sessions there. So wherever you are in the world, rebirthing as it's known, it is literally the portal to us collectively rebirthing the new earth, and I'll explain why thanks to the visions that I got. So we start off doing a circular breath, yeah, as if you're playing didgeridoo, the shaman's pipe, and it takes you into an altered state of consciousness, into the multi-dimensional realms. So we don't need drugs to do this, you know. And what initially came up for me, and the intention that I set, was to clear trauma and grief out of my nervous system and my sacral. And of course, energy flows where, you know, we set the intention. And so what came up for me was grief and anguish at not being claimed, not being chosen, but then at my ex-husband, bless him, for, hi everyone joining me live, for the joint pain that we created for our daughter and the impact that that has had on her. And so I was just emoting, it was just coming up and getting it out of my system. And then I went into the collective grief and sadness at the unconscious masculine. And then I went into the collective for the sisters. And that was pretty overwhelming. I had to get a bucket and, you know, it was only energetically vomiting, but certainly felt like I could have gone there. Anyway, where did that go? I made notes so I wouldn't forget. So then Frog came to me, and Frog was as big as me, and it oscillated between Frog and Scarab. And I assumed the pose of Frog. It's interesting, my first crush as a child was on Kermit the Frog, which is kind of nice that he didn't have a penis, but it's very innocent. But I loved that he was passionate about getting people together to pursue a dream in his heart, to follow his star, you know, to bring together the rainbow family. And that's something that resonated very deeply within my psyche, within my soul. So anyway, Frog comes to me, and in ancient Egypt, they had amulets of Frog that just said on them, I am the resurrection. And Frog represents the detoxification that we need to go through, the purification emotionally, if we are to have the shaman's death, if we are to have the psychological rebirth. And Scarab was also sacred to the ancient Egyptians. They'd put you know, talismans of Scarab onto the dead so that they could have a graceful passage into the next realm. But it represents self-initiation through the worlds. So, okay, I'll come back to the worlds later because that's an important point. So, and then just a heap of different totem animals kept coming to me. And I was reminded I'd done a wonderful one-day event, and I've blanked on the woman's name, so sorry, from Hawaii, who took us through the animal totems that govern our chakras. And she said in the indigenous way, if you are sick, if you are ill, it's for one of two reasons. There's either you've been compromised energetically, there's an entity, or you've lost connection with the totem animals that govern your chakras. And so, you know, I was hoping that Whale was going to come to me. Whale is the animal totem that governs my sacral, and that's where I've had a lot of core wounding, a lot of issues to heal. But no, it was Frog and then Scarab, and then Raven came. And Raven came all the way from Glastonbury, from, you know, Avalon. First, just one sat on my head, and this was the bird sacred to the Lady of the Lake, the High Priestess, but then a whole flock of them came and literally ate the flesh off my bones. And I was lying with my arms, you know, sort of crucifix pose. And what this enabled me to do was to move through the experience, to revisit an experience from my past which I hadn't been able to digest. And I've had a lot of digestive issues because there had been, you know, traumatic experiences in my past that I hadn't been able to process. I literally couldn't stomach them. And so this had affected my ability to process food. My mother was the same, and I know of a lot of women that get to midlife and they find that they're on a very stringent diet due to what their body can tolerate. And the red tent is a practice that does help us by processing our previous month's emotional experiences, it then helps to reduce bloating and to help our digestion. So think about that for those of you that aren't in a red tent. I know that's helped me enormously. The next Red Tent online course is starting actually very soon. So if you're interested, there's a free video tutorial about that ancient practice on my website. If you just go to themoonwoman.com and check out Red Tent. And there's an early bird special on there at the moment too. Anyway, back to the journey. So Raven is picking the flesh off my bones. And I'm reminded of a time when I came across a kookaburra. And kookaburra has been journeying with me since '97 as the sort of archetypal laughing teacher, someone who uses humor to help open people's minds through entertaining, through you know, making people laugh so that they relax and can receive new information. So, you know, kookaburra is very dear to my soul, and I had the wonderful gift of kookaburra dying in front of me and giving me its wings back in '97. So anyway, in 2005, I come across one that has been killed, and it's still alive, and ravens are eating its eyes. And I was really disturbed by this. I mean, raven was also a totemic medicine spirit animal for me, but this caused some separation between me and raven, because I couldn't get my head around how it could do that to a being that was still alive. And where I went in this shamanic journey was that then maggots started coming out of my yoni. I should have prefaced this video with a warning. And then they started cleaning up just the last remains of flesh that were still on my bones that the raven hadn't got, until I looked like Bone Woman. And I was reminded of another incarnation where the seed of my consciousness had gone into the ground and had experienced, you know, my my flesh being eaten by earthworms in a spirit of absolute generosity and love, gifting this so that they may live in the great wheel of life, you know. And, you know, this helped me to reconcile and digest that experience, that, you know, who was I to judge, you know, that kookaburra may well be doing this wonderful giveaway ceremony in love, a spirit of love and giveaway to the raven so that they may continue their journey with their energy. And so, you know, I recognize that as, you know, a shaman's, classic sort of shaman's death. And then snakes started coming out. Well, a snake entered up into my yoni. The Debbie Ma who was facilitating started a rattle, and the sound of that, you know, brought up rattlesnake. So serpent comes up, and then out of my fingers, out of the chakras in my palms, the chakras in my feet, more serpents, until I've just got serpents coming out of my body. And then I shapeshift into great-grandmother spider. And my yoni was very busy in this journey. Then I start spinning a web out of my yoni, right? For those of you that don't know what a yoni is, I'm speaking about my sacred opening, known as a vagina in the clinical term. But the yoni is the tantric term for it. And so I then start spinning red tents all over the planet, and I start spinning new earth warrior circles for men, which I've put in a proposal to run here in Ubud to align men with the solar wheel, and the Grail gatherings for men and women at full moon, and the Grail initiations, which I'm excited to say I'm going to be launching this coming blood moon. And then doing with a dear man, Tane Mahuta Heke in Australia, starting winter solstice 2019, and then circling the globe every winter solstice, alternating between northern and southern hemispheres. So, so I get in this, and I'm breathing, and I'm then through the breath. Oh, I missed out a very important part. So I'm lying there as Bone Woman. And Tane, who has been co-creating the Grail with me, then appears as Bone Man and starts breathing this breath of fire up through me, which embers start dancing around me, spiraling, and I turn into the phoenix with these huge rainbow wings. Not an actual phoenix, but like the totemic Native American symbol. You know, phoenix is what we rebirth ourselves out of through the intensity of life's experience. And that's what we're being all put through right now in these transition times, now that Uranus has moved into Taurus for these 7 years, starting in April this year. So this is the time when we are going through a physical metamorphosis with the Kundalini, the fire within the earth, coming up through our chakra system and literally helping us to become superhuman, superheroes. And when we come together with like beings who have a similar frequency, we, like the Super Friends, I used to love that cartoon as a kid, you know, where Wonder Woman is working with Batman and and Superman. So, you know, when we're dedicated to serving the greater good, serving the Mother Earth I'm referring to, we then start co-creating with others that are totally 100% aligned with that purpose, and it amplifies our gifts. So anyway, back to the journey. So, and then, so I start, you know, breathing this spirit of breath and fire as I'm, you know, spinning the web around the earth as Grandmother Spider and weaving. You know, the ancient menstrual shamans were weavers. They would all go into trance weaving. I watched an incredibly wonderful, insightful YouTube that Max Dashu has recorded. I encourage you to check it out, about the archaeological evidence showing that the ancient shamanic women all were weavers, were spinners, because as they did the act of spinning, they would be reweaving using their psychic vision to create the trajectory of what it is that they wanted to seed for the collective. It's why women were revered in the Red Tent Moon Lodges, for coming together and reweaving the tapestry. And I dare say why Carole King's album was such a success. Just the name itself struck such a resonant chord with our gift as women to birth by attuning our wombs with the cosmic womb and using our psychic vision combined with our Kundalini during the darkest phase of the moon to seed the new earth, to reweave the fabric of creation by calling upon the energies of Great Grandmother Spider, which we all have access to. So I'm visioning clean waters. I'm visioning, you know, all children are fed. I'm visioning, you know, all the wonderful, you know, visions we hold in our collective one heart that, you know, we certainly spoke while we were journeying in the Red Tent Temple Day here in Ubud during the solar eclipse last new moon. And then what comes through me is the collective voice of the sacred masculine, the sacred warriors, which is why I'm hoarse. And because the Polynesian tradition of ancient Lemuria is what's most resonant with my being, it was Batman that was leading that, chanting, but with fierce love for the mother of, you know, I stand with her. And there was this, you know, I could see myself transformed as this huge Polynesian warrior with thousands, millions of them, all chanting with me and saying enough is enough, not on my watch, through this ancient tongue prayer chant that was just bellowing through me. And then, still not done, and bless everybody else in the journey was going deep in their shamanic process, you know, everyone was having their own experience. Where else do I want to take you with this? So then Al came to me and sat here at my crown, transformed into the eagle, and together we flew over the canyons of America, of the Navajo people, where I know that I've also had an incarnation. And they said to me, you can see what needs to be done. In other words, having the sight of eagle, one who has the big picture, but the ability to see the details of what needs to happen, which is why the ancient chiefs of Native America would be initiated by spirit through finding an eagle feather every time they passed another lesson on their spiritual path until they had the full chieftain headdress, which is why I'm kind of disturbed by the fact you can buy them here in Ubud as a fashion accessory. I find that kind of cultural appropriation a bit off. But anyway, enough of my judgment. I'll keep going with the journey. So I was then taken to the world tree, like the tree in Avatar. And she fed me. She fed me again through my yoni. It's a very busy yoni. Until my cup was full and I transformed into this luminous chalice, into the Grail cup. And out of that came Swan. And Swan is the totemic animal that sits in my heart. And Swan was also sacred to Sarasvati here in the Hindu tradition, but again to the Lady of the Lake. You'll see in the Arthurian legends she's shown, you know, within a beautiful boat. It looks a little bit like a gondola, but it's carved in the shape of a swan. And that's because the role of the high priestess is to sit between the three worlds. If you know the shape of the mandala, so the two spheres that represent the light and the shadow, the masculine being the light, the feminine being the shadow, and that's not dark, that's not evil, that's the ability to go into the depths, into the cosmic womb, into the shamanic realms deep within, and to be able to also go up into the highest realms of the divine masculine, into pure consciousness. And only when we can journey equally to those polarities, which is the gift of this window of eclipses. That's what eclipses do. They take us into those extremes of those worlds, the upper and lower world. And when we can do that, then we can create heaven on earth as the holy child who sits in the present, being able to reconcile light and shadow in the heart, accepting it all as divine. And that's the role of the Grail. That's the whole point of the Grail initiations, and that what we practice as Grail maidens, you know, in the red tent and initiating women into those Magdalene mysteries, is that we can journey those three worlds without judgment, without shame, so that we can become not just whole but multi-dimensional. It's why the high priestess was shown sitting in the Vesica Pisces, which is that yoni shape between the two intercepting circles. And that was then appropriated, the high priestess, the images of her were then turned into, you know, Virgin Mary in that lozenge shape. But the role of the high priestess, and you'll see in the tarot card, is to sit between the pillars of the light and the shadow, and to offer the teachings of the 13th path, the longest, most treacherous path in the tree of life on the Kabbalistic mystical tradition. And that's because we have to journey through Dart, the sphere of doubt that sits in the third eye, and we have to learn how to be fully responsible for our fears so we don't unconsciously manifest them. That's the lesson of the sacral, and it's why it has the upturned moon sitting in the sacral. If we don't journey to the shadow and practice in the red tent, owning our shadow, if we never go there, we don't develop our wisdom, okay? It's why, you know, the fruit of wisdom, be it the fig, the pomegranate, the apple, is symbolic, taking the bite of tasting the dark fruits to become wise. And, you know, for the last 5,000 years since the Roman Empire ruled, And they demonized that by saying anybody who tasted the dark fruits of the goddess and the sacred feminine mysteries was evil. And so they ruled that no feminine practices would ever be taught or initiated or practiced for those 5,000 years. So it's absolutely key that to birth the new earth, we reinstate those ancient sacred practices, which is what we're doing. And I know I'm not alone in that. Hi to all the sisters that are doing that and to the brothers. So where am I taking you? Okay, so then I then got taken into a huge realization. After going into the collective, I came back to the personal, back to the grief, the anguish, the pain that I had experienced with my ex-husband and the trauma of not feeling his support. So doing a single mother journey for, 13 years and very symbolic, and feeling constantly undermined in that journey. We'd experienced homelessness, me and my daughter. There was a lot of trauma, which really, interesting, something just fell. Yes, I certainly fell to the underworld in that journey. So where I went in this journey was I got it. I got it on an intellectual level, but I hadn't really felt it in my heart. And I got how this man, my ex-husband, had done all that he had done from love. Love for me as a soul, but love for the mother, love for the collective sisterhood, the collective brotherhood, love for the Grail, because he had initiated me into the shadow masculine, which was my preparation for the Grail. That if I hadn't journeyed that personally, if I hadn't journeyed the cost of that, the cost on women, the cost on children, then I couldn't have initiated men into facing their shadow, taking responsibility for it. And that is what I'll be doing in this work, initiating men into the Grail. So my heart just burst open and I was sobbing gratitude and love for him, that he had allowed his vibration to become so dense, and the last time I saw him, he looked terrible, absolutely terrible. And so, my gratitude and my forgiveness, there wasn't even a need for forgiveness. It was just, So I want to honor him in that. I missed Jaguar came and made love to me at some point. And then Tane, the man who I'm going to be initiating the men with in the Grail, was with me in this beautiful swan boat, and we were sailing out into, I think it was a dawn, maybe a sunset, with whales swimming towards us, the wisdom record keepers. So it's certainly time to seed the Grail, or the Graal as it was known, the sacred blood. That's where we get sangria, but it refers to the blood of the womb, the life-giving blood. And when that was honoured in the ancient Neolithic matriarchal cultures, when the women would gather in moon lodges and bleed onto the hay, and the hay was then put onto the crops, instead of animals being slaughtered and blood and bone put on, which has a completely different energy, sacrificial blood, it's the blood of pain, whereas the blood of the life-giving womb, it's the blood of life. We think about stem cells and how rich and potent they are and how they can be used for therapeutic reasons, So putting them onto the plants meant that the plant's intelligence could recode according to what the people needed in their DNA, their health, their blood signature, the holograms of the blood, so that they were living in a state of real sacred communion with the earth, with the mother, with the fruits that she was feeding back to her children. So this blood moon is a huge collective blood rite where we are being asked to feel what's sitting in our wombs, our hara, our sacral, which is where the inner child sits, where the maiden sits, to have a watershed. Women may experience heavier bleeds. I know after I did that shamanic breathwork journey not only did I have explosive diarrhea, but I started bleeding again. So the amount of release that I did also then had to be purged out of my body afterwards. Just made it to the toilet in time, I might add. Moon's in Scorpio right now, so I think you can handle hearing this. It's very much about dealing with our crap. So, but also what was fascinating, you know, in the lead up to that new moon solar eclipse that we had, like many women, it turns out, around the globe, I had, you know, contractions, which is period pain. Yeah, the same cramps that we get when our uterus is shedding its lining and we're expelling the unfertilized egg. That's the same thing as labor. It's just, it gets more and more and more intense. So I had that for 7 days leading up to the solar eclipse. And I put a thing on my post on my Facebook Moon Woman page to say, hey, are there any other sisters out there feeling this? Because what happened was it then got really intense to the point where I could feel my pelvic bones aching 3 minutes before I felt an earthquake and the room shuddering here in Ubud. And it turned out hundreds of women were experiencing this, you know, a phantom pregnancy. We are rebirthing the earth. So, you know, Mama Gaia is trying to show us the power that we have to co-create with her the new earth. And what was really amazing was a lot of these women were postmenopausal and they were having contractions. So, you know, we are in this together. We are powerful beyond what we can even comprehend. We are not powerless. So there's a beautiful Hopi prophecy that I've included in the edition of the Astro Oracle that I've been working on all day, and I'll release it tomorrow. And it's when the women give their blood back to the earth, men will come home from war and earth shall find peace, which is such a powerful prophecy. So I would like to just extend that invitation to women. If you are not giving away by collecting your blood in cloth pads, which, you know, don't go into landfill, or using moon cups, both of these things which are not bleach, they're not carcinogens like most of the sanitary products that are on the market. And it means that you can collect your blood, you can return it to the earth. It's food for plants. It's, you know, returning the sacred blood changes the alchemy of the earth, so there will be less bloodshed, less war. So I explain in the latest edition of the Astro Oracle how when these ancient sacred blood practices and blood rites were outlawed, what the Romans did, the power elite all around the world, was they started doing dark rituals, blood sacrifices, and the most public ones were war. Okay, if you Google the term brotherhood, you will see images of soldiers, pawns, men that have been used as blood sacrifices for the amassing of power of the elite. And the way we undo that within the global psyche is returning the gentle blood, the wise blood, the life-affirming blood back to the mother as a gift, as food, to undo the power of blood being used associated with pain, with wounds. The blood from the chalice of the Sangreal, the Holy Grail that is within every woman's womb when she's fertile. You know, when we understand the power, the alchemy within that blood, and our psychic power when we're bleeding, this is a powerful, powerful practice. So I explain more about that in my Red Tent online course, which starts again August 17. You can find out about that on my website, themoonwoman.com. And if you'd like to know more about the Grail kingship rite, so initiating men through their annual period, which is winter solstice, because men are ruled by the sun, women are ruled by the moon. The moon is the reflective. It's about the journey into the dark. whereas the sun is about the light, the active polarity, and that's the masculine. And we have both polarities within us, but when men align with the solar cycle, they access their power, their battery pack, you know, and they find their power again to stand up to the tyranny of the corrupt leadership that we currently have on our planet, the tyrants. Now, this eclipse is conjunct the South Node. So that's our collective past. So this is an opportunity for us to revisit the wounds that have been inflicted through battle, through war, to feel the pain of that, to grieve it through tears, through blood, the sacred waters of our body. And in feeling it, we then go through the shaman's death, where we transmute that pain, and we are reborn like a baptism of tears into a new identity, a new perspective, a new awakening. You know, the North Node, so this is an axis, is in Leo. Leo is the hero who leads with the heart. Leo is the good king, the one who will not follow an external authority if he says kill in the name of power, but will say, no, my heart tells me I cannot. Like that beautiful brother who stood in Tiananmen Square in front of the tanks, risking his life to say, not on my watch. That's sacred warrior. So this is a time when many people will, because Aquarius is, you know, the symbol of Kundalini, it's about frequency, it's about energy. A lot of us are noticing who's on our wavelength and who isn't, who our frequency has outgrown. And it's not a bad thing. It's not something we're to feel guilty about. But if you know intuitively that person is going to drain me, I'm out of sync with them, we're out of step, don't override that and make plans to see them. Or the plans, the timing will go awry. They'll keep you waiting for an hour. I had that happen twice in the last 2 weeks when I didn't honor my intuition. And those transactions often feel very energetically draining. But this is a time to come together with those that are vibrating, oscillating at the same rate, generating the same amount of light as you, because they actually help to awaken more codes of ascension and remembrance within our template. So this is definitely a portal for rebirthing and remembering the return of the sacred masculine within us all. Aquarius is the cupbearer, so this is the return of the Grail. It is about us becoming receptive again, activating the feminine within us, whether we're male or female, so that we can receive those intuitive downloads, those intelligences from our collective mind of God, that will serve the greater good, whether that's innovations, inventions, whether that's intuitive insights. But this is a powerful window to meditate, to journal, to do automatic channeled writing, to just allow yourself the space to hear and receive. So if we're go, 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 busy, do, and in the rational mind, we're not open to receive divine intelligence, which is the 90% that we receive through the subconscious when we clear a lot of our past subconscious trauma. So in the latest Astro Oracle, I speak about how the myth of Aquarius was distorted. So they reduced Uranus, the prodigal son who returns and stands up to the corrupt authority figures, to the power elite. And they reduced him to Ganymede, who was simply a boy who served the cups, filling the wine cups of Zeus and the power elite. You know, he became their bum boy. When he wasn't pouring wine, he was doing sexual favors for them. You know, he was being used. So this has been anchored in the collective psyche, and it's meant that it's made it hard for men to get up off their knees and to stop being fucked over by the power elite, by the system. So this is a time for men to reclaim their power and not prostitute themselves by doing the work of corporate greed and doing the work in exchange for money that does not resonate with their heart. You know, it's no error that heart disease has been on the rise and is the #1 killer, and suicide also on the rise, because men haven't been honoring their hearts. So this is, you know, a potential portal when men are at risk of suicide and heart failure if they don't make that commitment to follow their heart and let the chips fall where they may, this eclipse. It's a time with Mars so close to the planet, the closest since my daughter was born 15 years ago in 2003. Mars being a time of conflict, and I understand now that the children born in that year had a lot of conflict that they were going to transmute, bless them. So, you know, this is a time for us honoring those who lowered their vibration to do those acts of war, not to judge them, not to send them hate, but to send them our compassion from our Graal, from the chalice in our heart that is overflowing with compassion, and the forgiveness that heals the way forward, that allows the grief to flow, that softens the anger so we can, like the waters breaking, rebirth the new earth. What else wants to be shared? So when men are no longer pawns of the system, we will see a decline in the addiction of pornography, because men who are not on their knees, who are not being dominated by the power elite, will not fantasize about dominating another in order to feel virile, the other being the sacred, the feminine. And that's not saying the masculine isn't sacred. It is equally sacred when it reconnects with the feminine within itself and becomes whole and balanced. So it is time to do things differently. The energy of Mars being so close at the moment is likely to feel like a pressure cooker internally, bringing up intensity of what needs to change. So this is a shout out to say, if you're feeling that intensity, get it out. Go for a run, box, kick, you know, scream, dance to activate the sacred warrior, but do not take it out on your loved ones. This is the shadow masculine. This is when we need to balance the masculine with the energy of Venus, with love, with beauty, with the wisdom of the sacred feminine, in order to bring back Adonis, to bring Aries, the warrior, into balance, into the sacred warrior, from being the soldier, the pawn, the job slave, so that he can be in balance as the sacred warrior who has on board Adonis, the lover archetype. So we have 5 planets that will be retrograde. So that means appearing backwards from Earth, closer than they usually would be to Earth. That's Mars, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, and Mercury just before the moon is full. Will all go retrograde. Now these offer us the opportunity to go within, to reflect, to review the past. So, you know, we're being given everything that we need to do this. And we also have Uranus forming a beautiful 60-degree angle, a harmonious trine with Saturn. Saturn is, you know, father time, the sort of the grandfather, the sage, the authority figure of the zodiac wheel. So Uranus, they're working in tandem now. The prodigal son, the reformer. So this is an opportunity for us to reclaim our authority wherever we've given our power away, but especially to the power elite, those that have worked in the shadows doing dark occult rituals. Take our power back by reinstating our sacred blood rights and making choices that honor our path with a heart, so that we can lead ourselves. And, you know, the gift in seeing the tyrannical leadership on the earth right now is that even children can see, like the emperor's new clothes, They don't know how to lead us. We have to lead ourselves. And that's what we are doing in the Aquarian age. We're taking full responsibility for ourselves. So just on a practical note, do avail yourself of extra support to support your nervous system due to the Aquarian energy and Mars working in tandem. So take magnesium or St. John's wort, and, you know, just ground as much as you can by walking barefoot on the Earth Mother, lying down if you're feeling manic, angry, uptight, stressed, and eating protein regularly, especially if you're tending toward insomnia between 1 and 4 a.m., which is when the electromagnetic field of the Earth Mother is at its strongest. Those that have passed through midlife and the transits of Uranus during midlife will find that more so than those who haven't yet gone through that gate of 40 through to 44 years of age. So I think that will do. If you find this insightful, then yes, you have my blessing to share this with your loved ones via the link. And thank you for joining me, those of you that join me live. And yeah, I'll be posting my Astro Oracle on my Moon Woman page hopefully tomorrow. It took me much longer. It took me the whole day to just download it and write it. And what else did I want to share? That you can subscribe for free if you want to get the updates every new moon on my website, which is themoonwoman.com. I am aware that I think it's over 80 consciousness raising Facebook pages have been closed down without reason. And so I'm just grateful that I'm still here, able to publish on Facebook. But if you want to be sure to receive insights, the best, most direct way is to subscribe via my website, themoonwoman.com. So blessings to you all. Be gentle with yourselves. Look upon natural beauty to connect yourself with the energy of Venus. Give yourself sensual pleasure. That's why I'm going out for dinner now with a bunch of sisters from the Red Tent. And yeah, just enter into that energy of the one heart, the compassionate heart for self, so you can be compassionate towards your brothers and your sisters, knowing that everyone has always done their best, even the shadow elite, even those who have caused, you know, irreparable, I don't think that's a word, harm to others. The way forward is through forgiveness, activating the higher heart into the throat, and together we will heal and rebirth. So I invite you, those of you that have the opportunity to do breath work, rebirthing, and through that process set the intention of revisioning, rebirthing a new earth where Gaia is restored to her template of a garden that has enough food, enough clean water, enough free land for all of her children to live sustainably in harmony with our social sustainability practices of sisterhood circles, brotherhood circles, rites of passage reinstated, so that we have the social infrastructure to grow into our divine blueprint by aligning with the spirals, the natural cycles of nature. So if you want to know more, I invite you to check out all the programs that I have on my website and my books at themoonwoman.com. Blessings. I love you all, global family. Thank you for following me. Ciao.